part of it is not the technical side. It's your personality. Being okay with being resilient, being okay with setbacks, and not viewing setbacks as you're a bad programmer. I view it the same way that I've always viewed when I've had a 6-year-old baseball player who is now an 18-year-old baseball player. I'm not going to expect my T-baller to perform and throw an 85-mile-an-hour fastball, right? That's just not in their skill set yet.
One of the age-old questions is, how do I become a programmer? And you know what? That's not such an easy answer. There's so many things that go into becoming successful as a programmer. We're going to talk about them more on this episode of A State of Control. A State of Control, episode 125. Welcome to A State of Control, an AVNation podcast that highlights the control, programming, and automation aspects of the audiovisual industry. My name is Steve Greenblatt. I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. On today's show, we're going to talk about what seems to be a simple question, but is going to have some complex answers, and that is, how do I become a programmer? And we'll continue that conversation after we get to introduce two guests who are going to be new to this show, but not new to AVNation, and we will meet them very shortly. And before we do so, I get to say hello to my co-host and partner here at A State of Control. He's none other than Rich Fregosa. How are you, Rich?
I'm good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's actually, I think, one of the longest stretches we've gone without talking. I missed a rare episode last month, so my streak was broken. But good to see you. I'm glad to be back. Glad to be starting 2025 off. Great. Unfortunately, I'm in Northern California, so I'm not dealing with the mess of a lot of friends that Southern California are dealing with. So, a little knock on wood on that. But got a lot of friends down there that it's been a little rough.
I bet. Well, it's good to have you back, and we did miss you on the last episode, and we had a little gap in recording. So we're back, and we're in for another year, and we're looking forward to sharing some great content with our audience. And to join us today, the first guest is Erica Carroll. She is the host of the Women in AV podcast on AVNation.tv, and she also owns Charbett and in the marketing space in AV. Welcome, Erica.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Glad to be here.
Thanks for being here. And last but not least, someone who I've gotten to know over the past year, and she is from Northampton Community College. She's a technology manager and also a newly crowned programmer. She is Britt Yenser. Welcome, Britt.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks for being here. And she's also the host of the Brave Space podcast, and we'll talk about that at the end. So we do have this topic of how to become a programmer, and becoming a programmer in AV isn't as easy as it's cracked up to be. There are some people who go to training and they think that I've completed my training, I've gotten a certificate, and now I'm a programmer. And there's others that kind of figure it out as they go, or they learn from their buddy, or they've just been in the field and it happens through osmosis. And then there are those who come to us from outside the industry and they have this skill set, but they also have to apply it to the application. So lots of different ways to become a programmer. Rich, I know that you have a lot of words of wisdom about this, but how would you recommend somebody start out to be a programmer?
As you know, my wife's in education, so we've gotten this conversation. We've had people reach out to us. We had people talk to us, at trade shows or just reach out. But from an education standpoint, we always start with first attempt in learning, fail. If you want to be an AV programmer, learn to fail, learn to embrace failure. Learn to work with failure, because your skill set is cumulative. Your first program is going to be horrible. You wait 5 years from now and you're going to look back at the programmer from you 5 years before and go, what was I thinking? It's okay. The interesting thing about programmers, or the programming mindset, is, just from a personality standpoint, there's that perfectionist in a lot of them, and so you want it right. It's a binary, right? Good, bad, yes, no. You learn, and you have to be willing to embrace the gray. We always say that as a programmer, the first thing you need to learn is that it's done for today, right? done and done for today. It's okay to let a project finish, and because you're always going to get better, you're always going to get new ideas. But part of it is being able to figure out, where where you can learn how to finish a project. When you're first starting out, because anybody can do a project with enough time and with enough experience. The goal to being a successful AV programmer is learning how to finish a project. And that's where you gain your experience from. And so it's a lot of fun. And honestly, right now, it's a really good time to be an AV programmer because the skill sets, the tools that are available are light years ahead of what we had 25 years ago. And there is a wealth of knowledge available now that we didn't have before. It was, we were a little bit like the Masons, to know when you had to be one. When we started out. Now it's come to the point where just community groups, manufacturer groups, social media groups. There's this wealth of information and a way to access the community to be able to grab it before. So when you're starting out, be ready and be open that you don't know what you don't know. It's the hardest part to deal with from the beginnings. You don't know what you don't know. You're going to go in thinking you have it figured out. You are going to have the idea that nobody in the history of AV programming has ever had before. And then you're going to run into it. And that's okay. I mean, that's the beauty of an experience. And part of it is not the technical side. It's your personality. It's your perseverance and your resilience. And the biggest part of it is just mentally, emotionally, physically learning, being okay with being resilient, being okay with setbacks and not viewing setbacks as you're a bad programmer, but just a setback is you're a learning programmer. And I coach sports. I've coached youth for 25 years. And so I view it the same way that I've always viewed when I've had a 6-year-old baseball player who is now an 18-year-old baseball player. That I'm not going to expect my T-baller to perform and throw an 85-mile-an-hour fastball, right? That's just not in their skill set yet. Will they grow into it? Absolutely, if their passion is there, all right? But it has to start from the beginning and from the fundamentals. And so, starting with fundamentals is okay. Starting with grabbing and accessing your resources. And the tough one, the toughest one is if you want to get into this, learn how to ask for help, learn how to ask for advice, and learn how to make sure that you don't take it personally that you're not at that level yet.
I know when I first started in the industry, and at the time I was at a projector manufacturer and I was fielding a lot of calls, specifically on RS-232 control, and coming from a very brand new state, I had no idea what that was, and I was given the opportunity to literally just play and learn and look at everything from a sense of curiosity. And when you put it in this curiousness bubble, it becomes imaginative. What could I do? And if it fails, that's fine. How could I do it different? I think everything you said was absolutely spot on. But adding that sense of curiosity just as you're starting out, I know that's what made me most curious and most excited about what programming was. Because, at that time, I had no idea. And 3 years into it, I was actually going on site to help people troubleshoot their codes because, no two manufacturers have the same set of codes for their individual products. But yeah, I think that from all walks of life, as you're learning, to get into or getting excited about AV programming, just exploring it from a curious state is a fun way to look at it.
But how can you relate to this as somebody who is in that place of learning and newly learning programming?
Yeah, I feel a spiritual connection to everything that has been said because yes. And I'm a person who has a very strong growth mindset, a very strong sense of curiosity. I often joke that I have the how hard can it be gene, where, I'm just going to approach it like, well, how hard can it really be? Like, I'll figure it out. And I recognize that it's going to take me some time. I'm going to have to lean on other people. When I first started, I had two computers and I would open up a config that someone else had done so that I could cross-reference what I was doing and see, like, all right, am I on the right track based on what's been done in the past? And I felt like that was really powerful as a learning tool because there is a sense of creativity to this work, but creativity is the highest level of learning. Like, you can't be creative until you have other series of knowledge sets. So it was kind of like, let me learn the ropes, let me get the basics, and someday in the hopefully near future, I can do this on my own and be creative about it and take my own approach. In the meantime, I'm going to steal from other people who know what they're doing just to make it work.
To that point, and I get your thoughts about this. Is that that getting it to work is obviously the goal, but getting it to work to what the user finds valuable is a second and probably more important outcome.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the power of tinkering too. So I have a little rack in my office, and that's where it's the real get it to work, experiment, work my way toward my own creativity and what I think is the best model for a user interface and what that config looks like. And then when I need a classroom to be functioning, then, that's more base it on someone else's work. What do I know works? What do I know our users are used to at this time?
So, Erica, share with us, I guess, a little bit about when it comes to actually training or teaching somebody or having content that can be educational. What have you found works well for somebody that is really starting out and that you don't necessarily know where their starting point is?
Sure. So I am certainly the most novice of all of us here today when it comes to programming, but I did build from the bottom up a training course for a signal distribution manufacturer, previous employer, where they announced a control platform that is completely, they said drag and drop, but it's more like in and out, just specifying what are the ins, what are the outs, and all of the programming to it is already built into the software. So, we never had to look at any of that code. And as somebody who is not versed in any extensive programming languages, I would say it's one of the easiest ways to just get your foot in and start playing with control programming in general, is these WYSIWYG, drag and drop solutions that multiple manufacturers have come out with, because you get those quick wins, you get to see things connected, you get to see things starting to work, and it sort of builds your confidence on what could be. So teaching that sort of thing for me is really inspiring, because you can see like just the beginnings of where somebody can start as a programmer, starting with the easy tools. It's like the training wheels that could lead to something bigger and better and more customized, and really expand on what you've already learned.
Rich, I'll jump over to you. One of my things is I'm a believer in the fact that the code is a skill, but the challenge comes more in defining what you want to actually happen. And so being able to define how a system should work, understanding what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, and then being able to customizing it, putting it into code. To Erica's point is, it kind of takes a back seat to figuring out what you want the system to be. Where does the difference lie, I guess, in somebody that is looking at doing more of a configuration solution versus a programming solution, and in terms of learning programming? Should somebody learn one before the other, or is it it depends on what their needs are?
There's a couple of roads, right? You can work for an integrator as part of a programming staff. You can be part of an educational facility, so you could be a staff programmer for the university, a technology manager, somebody who's responsible for the upkeep, maybe of after a system has been deployed, where a third-party programmer, an integrator will come in, they will provide the foundational code and system itself, and then at that point there is a handoff that occurs to on-site personnel. Step one is, where do you want to work? Where are you going to get a job? Maybe you go independent. Starting out independent with no programming experience, I don't recommend it. That's a lot to try to chew off at once. I would say, of the only don'ts in the industry, don't do that. But where it comes from, Britt nailed it. She's like, I've got my own little rack here. I test dog food, everything. We do, right now, one of our skills that and again, I'm kind of promoting it to anybody who's doing programming right now, is we've developed a remote programming kit. So I've got, currently in the past month, I've shipped out 60 of them. And so the reason why is that, say, you don't have the kit at home, but you need to check things out. Well, great. If at the university you've got a test place, or if you've got the rack build is going out, or there's a site, learn what the devices are doing. With high-speed internet now, you don't just have to sit there with the program and go, it should work. A big part of it, whether you're doing configuration, what I try to explain about configuration is learning how to operate within the guardrails. Okay. Guardrails are put in place. So the biggest thing that you're going to learn, even if it says, oh, it's drag and drop programming, no programming required, you need to learn where your guardrails are. Because if a request comes out outside of the guardrails, it may not happen. So part of it becomes, okay, can it happen? Can't it happen? Can we form a workaround? Which then leads into the custom programming side. The custom programming side at that point becomes, okay, what is missing from this that isn't meeting the use case, and how can we bridge it closer? Is it operational or is it cosmetic? And so you start learning how to differentiate, right? You start, as you get more experienced, you start figuring out nuance. And what we try to explain to everybody is that a good, the first thing you always get is, I just need it real simple, right? We need it really, really simple. So what you have is very sophisticated. What you're actually asking for is something elegant. And there's a difference between elegant and simple. And so when you're starting out, when you can start differentiating the difference, okay? Simple, honestly, is a button for button UI. This thing has 64 buttons. The simplest thing for me to do is throw all 64 buttons on here. That's done. That's a 1-for-1. Elegant is, what is the minimum amount of friction points, button presses, that I can achieve the result? It's the same thing code-wise. It's absolutely the same thing code-wise. The difference is where are you then becoming a facilitator and getting from point A to point B? That's where your skill set comes as a control systems programmer, and learning how to communicate with the team, right? So the first thing they'll say is, okay, well, I need a 32 by 32 matrix switcher, and I need a DSP with all the microphones and this and that. Great. I can give you a giant mixing board, but you already have one. Now let's go ahead and condense. And so For novice programmers, that's the biggest thing, which is instead of saying, yeah, I can do it, no problem, the difference becomes, tell me how you plan on using it. Like, walk me through a day. Like, if you walk into the room, what are you expecting? Like, let's just, they're like, oh, I just have normal needs. Great. We're normal people. We're not technologists. We're not, again, we love the tech, but, I always say I came from an art background. I came from a completely different medium. And so the question becomes the experience. What's the visceral experience you want? Do you want to be able to walk in and you know that 99% of the time this is going to happen? Well, great. Do we have the tools to pull it off? If not, what's then your next best option? Do you have to tell it, hey, I'm here, as opposed to it knowing you're there, right? That's step one. And then you work back, right? You hit the use case first. When you're first starting out, because everything's so cool and you love what you do, you want to show everybody your stuff. But at that point, it's kind of like giving a toddler a puppy and an espresso. They're like, look at all I did, and I did all this. It's great. It's good. We get it. You're excited. We love it. Let's get it. But that's not what I asked for. And so that's the biggest part of it is that depending on your team and learning how to communicate with your team, and creating the space, because that's really the essence, and learning how to distill, and that's where experience and wisdom and everything comes for. And as you get more experience, and you'll get somebody who comes in and says, oh, we ought to do it like this, this, and this. Yes, however, we did that before, and here's what happened. Okay, have you done that before? Well, no, but it's a great idea. Okay, we have done it before. Might I suggest ... And so you're learning team management skills and interpersonal skills as much as you're learning programming skills. And those are all of the things. Like, if as a programmer, if you're not picking up how to, at literally, what is it? How to win friends and influence people, 10 steps of success. If you're not cultivating your ability to communicate at the same time that you're cultivating your ability to program, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you will then become just the programmer. You will then become the person that they point to over there and say, oh yeah, leave them alone. Don't talk to them, right? 98% of the programs I know are wonderful, fascinating people, passionate people, but they pigeonhole themselves. And so take that time out, because what if you want to become a programming manager someday? What if you want to run a programming company someday? What if you want to switch different industries where you come from educational to residential, or you want to do something? I mean, we evolve and we find new passions. Your skill set's going to be your skill set. Okay. Turning a projector on and off is going to be the same in a courtroom, in a classroom, or in a multi-billion-dollar estate. All the same. How you deliver the experience and how you communicate the difference between dealing with court staff, IT managers, or an interior designer. That's the nugget, right? How do I learn how to operate within these, if you choose, right? Some people say, hey, I love education. This is it. This is my bag, right? Love it. I'm here all the time. That's a great career path. But also know what's out there, because you'll bring things in from the outside. And that's the fun part about it. And again, you've got a group out there, join all of your local organizations, join all of the community groups. Every manufacturer now at this point, we have some phenomenal former programmers who are now part of community management. Women in AV who are doing a great job that just moved over to a manufacturer. I mean, there's so much stuff. I mean, again, 30 years ago, I wish I had it. I'm just glad now that I can help promote it.
I am glad that you touched on all of those things, because I too believe that there's a lot that goes into being successful. And the challenge that I would throw out there, and Erica, I'll let you weigh in on this, is that if you learn from one manufacturer or one platform, how transferable is that to others? And to Rich's point, there's a lot of skills that seem very universal, and much of that is beyond the nuts and bolts of the technical stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of the universal skills are also, just the basic system design principles, networking basics, interoperability, all of that is pretty transferable, but manufacturer specific, a lot of times it's proprietary tools and languages that I don't think, I mean, the logic between them is there, but the actual language I think is different. Britt, since you're going through this, I'd actually toss it over to you and ask you how much of it is transferable between manufacturers or what's universal.
I am strictly in Extron world right now. And from talking to other technology managers with other types of shops, they have told me that they feel like some things are comparable and some things aren't. Like there's not really a cut and dry answer to that. I think that some of the ways that their softwares function might feel similar, but like you said, the code that's driving it is very different. And so like that's one thing that I would caution people about their mindset when they're learning things. And this might be a little soapboxy. Let me just get up here real quick. I feel like the way we have designed the K through 12 learning system in the past decades has taught young people that there's a cut and dry answer to things, that they can memorize something and that they can pick out the answer. But that is really not how most careers and most adult lives work. And so when you're learning programming, it's not like I'm going to memorize this thing and it's going to work the same way every time. Every time this is the answer. The answer is C. Like, no. So just kind of cultivating that mindset, that learning mindset of always growing and always exploring and understanding it's not going to be the same answer every time. And I would even argue that when you get into coding, like, which is not a skill I have, I will never claim to have that skill. But I would argue that especially in higher ed where computer science is a major and people formally learn to code, I would take that out of the computer science department and I would put that in the language department. I think that the reality is you're learning a language and that's the skill set and that's the mindset that you need.
Mm-hmm. That's actually what we teach also, not to plug another thing, but our Rosie Riveters Explores Pro AV program, where we drop STEM kits into primary elementary at school. One of our kits is binary coding, and the whole premise of that is that computers speak a different language. And I agree. I mean, we have to teach these kids that it is absolutely a different language, and to the point where we have them spell out their names in binary, because it is a different language. But you get to see, how it translates into how we would read it or understand it. Just as a foundation, that's how we start talking about programming in AV and programming in technology through those binary coding kits.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Britt, tell us a little bit about what is a challenge that you've run into in becoming a programmer, or what maybe something unexpected that you could share that could benefit other people.
I think it's just learning how to merge all of the different skill sets into one, kind of like what Richard was talking about before. So you have to have the communication, leadership, management skills, which, not to toot my own horn, but I have that locked down. So I just had to merge it. But, knowing like, who do I meet with? Who are the stakeholders? What is important to them? And how do we speak the same language together? And how do I ask them the right questions, pull the right information out of them without making it sound too technical and too scary? And then taking what they have communicated to me and figuring out, okay, now I need to make this product. How do I do that? What does the configuration look like? And in order to do that, I have to know, how does this specific software work? Unfortunately for me, I am on a campus with 3 different campuses, one of which has fallen behind. So they actually are on like older softwares that are not being used anymore, because that all of that equipment really has been retired and softwares have moved on. So I had to learn what's the old version and what is the new version, and at which point am I using which version. And there have been times I have accidentally opened the wrong software, could not figure out why this wasn't working for me, and then was like, whoops, I'm in the wrong place. I'm lost. So, just understanding what software does what, how does it work, and then also getting a deep understanding of what is living in that rack. So it's a signal flow skill. What are these boxes doing? How are they talking to each other? I need to know that to actively get them to talk.
Yeah, that's very well put. And I guess as we wrap up, one of the things I think that we're bringing out here is that, one, it's a very complex role, and there's a lot of components to it. And I love the communication part of it, and I love the logical thinking part of it. Erica, I'll let you weigh in on this first. Do we see a day where programmers really are not focused on writing code, but more so dealing with the things that make a system work, and writing the code is just almost like pressing a button?
Yeah, actually. So as you said that, it made me think about how AI is taking a step into AV, and that I could see that being, anything that is learned, that could be a learned language, right? So it could fit into an LLM easily, just as long as it's prompted in the right way. It's going to be up to the programmer to understand how the system works, how everything's supposed to work together, and what the expectation is from the user to make sure that whatever is pumped out of an AI tool that, effectively would already know all of that stuff for you, to make sure it works in the expected way, and maybe even better than expected.
Yeah. Britt, any follow-up on that?
I guess I would just add that if this is something that you're interested in, then you should put yourself in the place where you're going to be given the tools and opportunity to pursue it. So in order to get where I am right now, I had to leave a previous role because they didn't see it as a part of the role I was in. And no matter how much I said I would like to learn this thing, they would not give me the tools or the time to pursue it because they couldn't see how it fit in what they were asking me to do. So sometimes, and like Richard had kind of said earlier, like, well, what do you want your job to be? Find where what you want to do fits so that you can be given the resources to pursue your goal.
It's a good place for us to wrap this one up, and good advice. So thank you guys for being part of this conversation and joining us today. Erica, Carroll from Charbett, how can people get in touch with you, learn about listening to the Women in AV podcast on AVNation, as well as learn what you're up to?
Yeah, you can find me at the Erica Carroll in all of the social places. You can find me at the Women in AV podcast on avnation.tv. And learn more about what we're doing with Rosy Riveters and teaching kids the fundamentals of technology and how to pursue an intentional career in AV. You can learn more about that at avgives.com.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Britt Yenser from Northampton Community College, thanks for joining us today. How could people get in touch with you, learn about your podcast, Brave Space, and also continue this conversation?
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks again for having me. This was fun. So I am Brave Britt on the socials. I'm on X and Blue Sky, and I am also on LinkedIn as Britt Yenser CTS. And my podcast, Brave Space, is on higheredav.com, as well as all of the podcast platforms.
And highly recommended. So
thank you.
And Rich, another great episode. How can people get in touch with you, learn what you're up to, and any closing remarks?
This excites me, having a podcast like this where Steve and I have always talked about making sure that we highlight some pretty kick-ass people who are doing some really good stuff and having the opportunity to do it, because we know the AV industry, how it's skewed 90% male, and there's so much opportunity in this industry and so many voices. And so I'm always appreciative when I get to meet new voices and get new perspectives. I mean, you both just dropped knowledge bombs on me that I went, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. I get it. I'm going to steal it. So, I'm going to pass it on to somebody else. But, again, what I love here is just, listen to the voices that are out there. And like you said, keep your curiosity. If you're curious and you want to find out about Uncle Richie, nice segue. You can find me on the socials at Fregosa, fregosadesign.com, the business. But first and foremost, as I always say, I would prefer that you find me here on AVNation.tv and our suite of shows. Obviously, Women in AV and some of the others, State of Control and Resi Week and AV Week. But that would be the place I hope you find me. And of course, always support our sponsors so that we can keep bringing you these shows. Absolutely.
And just as a side remark, before we were recording today, we were talking about learning new applications and doing AV systems in different verticals. And Rich was saying how he learned so much. And after so many years of doing this and still learning, it means that there's a lot of opportunity in doing what we do. So that's really cool. For me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. My company, Control Concepts, is at controlconcepts.net. And we do some of the drivers, modules, and plugins that help devices communicate and help programmers get their projects done. So if you want to find more about that, reach out.
And great tools for programmers just as well. Don't bury the lead on that. There's some great tools that they've developed free of charge, by the way. So if you're learning programming, go to Control Concepts, grab those modules. It will make you a better programmer.
Thanks so much. And as Rich said, please let us know that you're out there and let us know that you want to be part of the conversation. And we're happy to have you. We are looking to expand our horizons and have new voices and new topics and make sure that we're covering the things that programmers and those who want to learn about programming want to hear more about. And we hope you like this topic. And there's a whole lot more that we could provide related to it. You can reach out and leave us a review, rating, or connect with us in all of the methods previously mentioned. And until next time, this has been A State of Control,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Hi, this is Jennifer Goodyear
and Erica Carroll
from the Women in AV podcast, where we are encouraged by the incredible stories of women in AV.
Listen in on fun, empowering conversations as we chat with inspiring women, breaking barriers and creating their own path in the industry.
Check out Women in AV on avnation.tv or wherever you get your podcasts.